Alright, in this video I'm going to show you how to assemble the Satsuma's engine, and then also how to get the engine in the car, running, and then how to tune it. So first thing you're going to start with is the engine block. Go ahead and flip it upside down. Grab your crankshaft, put it in there, like that. And you're going to want to grab your main bearings. Goes right there. That's number 1, number 2, and number 3 with that little outlet couplet part on the left there. Goes over where the crankshaft comes out, right there. A 9mm socket with 9mm bolts each. 2 9mm bolts each. After that, go ahead and flip your engine back around. Each of your 4 pistons, because this is a inline 4 engine. After that, flip your engine back over and grab your 7mm socket. And there are 2 7mm nuts per piston, making 8 in total. Next, flip your engine back over and get your head gasket. Then you're going to want to grab your cylinder head. That is held on by 10 7mm bolts. Next, you're going to want to grab your rocker shaft, which has your rockers already on it, 8mm. 5 8mm bolts. And then we will come back to tune this later. Next, you're going to grab your rocker cover. It's held on by 6 7mm bolts. Bring it back down. Just bring one side. Next, you're going to want to grab your headers. Put on right there on the side. You're going to want to make sure these are tight. It is held on by 5 8mm bolts. Make sure these are all the way on there. So otherwise, if you start it without them all the way on there, headers will fall off and could potentially cause a fire. Next, you're going to want to install your carburetor. That's held on by 4 8mm bolts. Again, make sure these are all the way on there. And next, we're going to install the camshaft, which is this. That is held on by 2 5mm bolts. These ones right here, they're pretty tiny. Next is your camshaft gear, which is held on by 1 10mm bolt. And we're going to tune this, that way the engine will be in time. So we're going to rotate it until it lines up with that mark right there. There's also a line on the crankshaft. Alright, once you're close, slow down a bit. Looks like we're about 1 tick out. That looks lined up. Now grab your timing chain. That on there like that. Timing cover goes on right there. It is held on by 6mm bolts. Still going to be precise. All the way around the edge of the cover. Next, you're going to install your water pump. It's held on by 5 7mm bolts. And your water pump pulley goes on the edge of the water pump right there, held on by 4 7mm bolts. Next, you're going to install your crankshaft pulley, which is held on by 1 11mm bolt. Now you're going to want to grab your alternator. Goes right there. It's held on by 1 7mm bolt at the top here, and also 1 10mm bolt back here. And now we are ready to put the alternator belt on, so we're gonna put this as loose as it can get, so as to the left it can get. Grab your alternator belt, that on there, and now to get this to be the right tightness, you're gonna put this all the way to the right that it can go, and scroll up 2 clicks, like so. And grab your screwdriver and tighten that connection. Now you were not able to accidentally move the alternator, and it won't move when you start the engine. Now we can flip the engine around to the other side, like that. Now we're going to put on the oil filter. Tighten that on there. Going to grab the distributor, which we will tune later. Put that on there. And that's held on by a screwdriver. Screw. Now you're going to want your fuel pump. It's held on by two 7mm bolts. Now we're going to flip it all the way around to this side. Grab the engine plate. And your flywheel. And that is held on by six 7mm bolts. Now you should be able to cycle the engine. Now you can grab your starter. Put that on right there. It's held on by two 7mm bolts. The other one is kind of hidden back there. It's right there though. Next is the clutch assemblies. First you go clutch pressure plate, then your clutch disc. Then you can install the whole clutch onto the engine. That's held on by six 6mm bolts. And then now we can lift the engine and install the oil pan. And that's held on by eight 7mm bolts. Sorry, 13mm drain bolt. Next you're going to grab your gearbox, put it on like that. There's one 10mm bolt on the back here where it connects to the engine block. And you're going to want to install the two bottom 7mm bolts. Then grab the inspection cover and tighten the top four 7mm bolts. Next you're going to grab your drive gear, and that is held on by seven 6mm bolts. And last but not least, your air filter, which is right up here on the table. That's held on by two 6mm bolts. And now we are ready to put the engine on the hoist. And I heard that bolt sound. You have two bolts that take 10mm socket, wrench. Oh, almost forgot. Spark plugs. You need to do these. Get your spark plug socket. And put these on the side right here where the cylinders are. And now we can raise up the engine on the engine hoist. Now that it's raised all the way up, we can bring the car chassis inside. Now this might take some trial and error, but you need to push it in. And now we can install the subframe, which goes under the hood like that. And that is held on by four 10mm bolts. Go ahead and tighten those. Now we are ready to install the engine into the engine bay. So I'm going to go ahead and lower it. That way we can make sure we got that bolt, that bolt, that bolt, and that bolt, I believe. Got all three bolts. Those are held on by 11mm socket wrench wheel. And it goes like that. And then now we can disconnect the engine from the hoist with the two 10mm bolts. Raise the hoist up and bring it back. So we're going to start with the electrics. Find it best you grab it from the blue wires. You can put it directly on the spark plugs, like so. And that is held on by two 8mm bolts. Next, grab the fuel strainer. Find it best you hold it this way. Go around bottom left there. And that's held on by one 8mm bolt, the radiator. I'm using the racing radiator for this case because it's more reliable than the stock radiator. Or 7mm bolts. And now we're gonna want to install the radiator hoses. Go with number 1. Goes from the start to the engine block like that. Goes from that connector on the right there, like so. Find it best you just go from the bottom connection in the radiator, like so. And then go ahead and grab your screwdriver, and there's 5 screws you have to tighten. One right here, one right here, one right here, one right here, and finally one right here. Suspension, our wishbones. One goes right there, held on by 10mm bolts, 2 on either side. Next, we're going to want to grab our spindles. Those are held on by one 12mm bolt on the bottom. Next, you're going to want to grab your steering rack. Goes on the front right there. That is held on by 4 9mm bolts. Next, you're going to want to grab your steering rods. Next, you're going to grab your struts, which are held on by a lot of bolts. We're going to start with the 11mm bolts on the top, 10mm bolts on the top. There's 3 of those. Next, you're going to grab your 9mm socket. Get these ones down here. And then finally, the 12mm socket that combines both the strut and the steering rod. I did this side, I'll go finish up the other one. Next, you're going to want to grab your disc brakes. These just go on the front there, like that. Don't tighten this 14mm bolt yet. You're going to want to grab your half shaft with this rusty part going towards the engine, and this part with no metal at all going through the brake, like so. And that is held on by 3 9mm bolts on the gearbox right there, and then one 14mm bolt on the disc brake. Next, you're going to grab your steering column there. That is held on by 2 8mm bolts. Next, we're going to go ahead and grab our clutch master cylinder. It goes in the engine bay on this side. Kind of like that. Our brake master cylinder, held on by 2 8mm bolts for each. And then inside of the car, on each pedal, there's one 9mm bolt. Going to want to install our trail arms, and those are held on by 2 12mm bolts. And you may now hear the car smashing into the ground. That's just a glitch with the suspension not being done yet. And then now you're going to want to grab your coil springs. Those on like that. And then your shock absorbers. go on like that. And those have one 12mm bolt at the top and two 6mm bolts on the trailing arm. Next, you're going to want to grab your drum brakes. Goes on right there, and we can tighten down that 14mm bolt, and that's the suspension basically complete. Next, we need to install the brake and clutch linings, which can be found here on the shelf. Those are held on by 7mm bolts. You have to use a spanner for these. And we'll start the clutch one because it's easier. There's one right here on the master cylinder, and one connecting to the drive gear and gearbox right here. And the brake lining has many bolts. There's 7 in the engine bay. And there's one at each wheel. Next, we're going to work on the interior. Start with the dashboard. Just held on by two 10mm bolts. One right here in the glove compartment, or glove box, and one right here at the pillar. Grab your dashboard meters and install that. One right here, and one right here, both 6mm. Next, we're gonna install our clock gauge, 7mm bolts. Kind of have to get your head back in there. Punch your head through the dashboard to get that in there. Next, you're gonna grab your radio. That just goes on there like that. No bolts needed. Seats. Start with your driver's seat. That's held on by 4 9mm bolts. Now we can install the exhaust pipe. And I find that easiest. You grab it right about here. Lean in right here. Right in the middle where your exhaust would be. And just play around until you get that check mark. And that is held in there by 3 7mm bolts. 2 in the engine bay connecting to the headers. And then if you go under the car, there's one right here. Next, we're going to want to install the steering wheel. That's held on by one 10mm bolt. And then we're going to grab our handbrake, which is held in there by 4 8mm bolts. And then under the car, you have one 5mm bolt located right here. And that will lock up your rear brakes. And then your gear stick installs right there. That is held on by 3 6mm bolts. And now we can install our fuel tank. Goes right under there. Held on by 7 11mm bolts. And then your fuel line is connected with one 12mm bolt that must be installed with the spanner. There's the fuel tank pipe. Just goes on there with no bolts. And now we can install our rear left light or right light, whatever order you want to go in with the lights. Next, we are going to jack the car up. You can either use the car jack, but you will find more success using this floor jack when at your house. And since we have wizard powers, we can just make it float in the air and lift the car up. Then we're gonna grab one of our wheels right there, like that. Those are held on by 4 13mm sockets. And then lower the jack and wheel it over to the front of the car. Let's lift it up like so, and you can go in and grab your wheels. Now we can put lights in the headlights. You can really do this anytime you want. The headlights aren't even in the car yet, so you can put the lights in whenever you want. The gear linkage is held on by 4 5mm bolts. One here, and one all the way up here. Now we're ready to wire the car. So we can grab our battery, our old one that does no longer work. That'll be our placeholder battery. And we can grab our wiring mess. And we're going to start with our positive terminal to fuse box to main wire connector. And then just kind of press F until everything is connected to the car. That's kind of what I do. It's pretty easy. You can even go back here if you need a better view. Some things connect to the fuse box. And then you're also going to want to make sure that you get your alternator to your regulator and your ignition coil. Make sure you also get that ignition switch, otherwise you literally can't start the car. And you're also going to want to get the front light connector. Hook that up to the headlights. I can see the wire running to back here. And this goes to the back lights and the fuel tank goes down into that hole, which wires up the fuel tank. Now we can read our fuel level. Now we can install our headlights, which are held on by 2 7mm bolts. And then we can also put on our back panel, which just goes back here. And then if you install subwoofers, this is where you would put your subwoofer panel, this wooden piece. But I don't have any subwoofers, so unimportant. You can also install our muffler, and that's held on by a 7mm bolt right there. Next, we need to unhook this 7mm bolt from the starter and find our wiring mess, and that goes from the negative terminal to the battery ground connector in the starter. Make sure that goes to the positive terminal. And I'm also going to install these extra gauges and an AFR gauge to make tuning the car easier. And then we can wire those. AFR gauge goes to the dash harness connector and the extra gauges as well. And now we are done with this battery. You no longer need it as we start putting oil in the car and get her running. So I'm going to start with gasoline. Just unscrew that cap. Pour that gas into there. I only have a limited amount, a very limited amount. I forgot to grab gas before I started. I don't feel like getting more, but it should be enough to tune the car. Can unscrew these caps. because without putting brake fluid in these, we would have no clutch or brake, meaning we couldn't shift. And if we only filled up the clutch one, we would be able to shift and gain speed, but we would not be able to stop. For obvious reasons, I think you can tell why that would be bad. And then double check, make sure all those are filled, and in this case they are. And then add your oil until full. Get that out of here. Tighten our cap back up. Unscrew the coolant cap. Make sure you literally never do that when the engine is hot. But in this case, the engine hasn't been started for God knows how long. Now that's good. Tighten the cap up. And just visually confirm that there are no leaks. And finally, make sure you reinstall that bolt on the starter. And then there's one more bolt that we have to install. A 5mm bolt on the top of the starter. And now we're ready to give her a start and tune her. So we're going to go ahead and grab our battery. And that's held on by two 8mm bolts. Make sure you always install the positive side first. The positive or red connection. Never install the black one first, otherwise you could cause a fire. Fire next to engine with fuel in it. I think you can see where that's bad. We go in here. Let's see our gauges changing. And the first start could take a while, because it hasn't been ran in a while. So just have some patience. See that oil light come off, then it's pressurized. Pull the choke so that way the engine doesn't turn off. You should see that black, rich smoke coming out of the back. Now we're going to go ahead and tune the engine. So we're going to unscrew this rocker cover, which has those 6 7mm bolts. And now we're going to go ahead and grab our screwdriver. And on each of these screws, you're going to scroll down until you hear a chirping sound, as so, and then scroll back up. And we're just timing each of the valves perfectly. You could also do a sequence of scroll ups and scroll downs if you look them up online, but I find this way to be much easier and works much better. Now put that rocker cover back on there and tighten those bolts back down. Next, we're going to tune the distributor. Unscrew that bolt one click, or that screw one click. Then we're going to scroll back on this as far as we can without it chirping. You scroll back, you advance it. You want your engine to be as advanced as possible without it causing issues. If it's not tuned correctly, you'll have poor acceleration and poor fuel economy, and your engine will stall a lot. So we're going to scroll back on this until we hear a chirping noise. Like that. And then just scroll up till it stops. And then try and find a point where you scroll down once, it starts chirping. Scroll up once and it stops. When it stops like that, you're perfectly tuned. You're good to put that screw back in. And now we can go tune our AFR. So once your engine is warmed up, I find to make it warm up faster, you can make the mixture very lean by scrolling up on that bolt right there that adjusts the AFR. Your mixture is lean. You'll see this whiter smoke coming out of the back. This will give you very good fuel economy at the cost of, well, your engine. You do not want a lean mixture in this car. It'll cause it to overheat a lot and it will cause damage to the car. So what we're shooting for is an AFR in that green area. To pass inspection in town, we need an AFR of 14 to 14.9. So we're going to make this mixture a bit richer. And make sure you only do this when your engine is at operating temp, which is the middle of the temp gauge. See, we're kind of bouncing to 15 there, so I'm going to give it one more scroll down. And now we're only staying in that 14 to 14.9 range, which means this engine is fully tuned and is ready to drive. Well, we're not really ready to drive, and that is because the steering rods are out of alignment. Now, to sum this up, you need a 14mm spanner. It will not work with the socket. Gonna scroll down on this as far as you can until the wheel stops moving. Now you can see, even though I'm scrolling down, the wheel's not moving. And it's pointed very inward now. This is known as inward toe, which would be better for high speed, but we're just looking for a good town driving car. So now we're gonna scroll up 60 clicks. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 58, 59, 60. Now that wheel is good and nice and straight with a bit of outward toe, which is better for steering at low speeds. I will now align this side, get my wheel hooked up, and I will give this thing a test drive. Yeah, I had to reload the game once because it was glitching. Now, hopefully, make sure I have the handbrake all the way down. Start her up. And then with that engine just started and the AFR is pretty high, you'll see that black smoke or white smoke, and it'll probably backfire sometimes. Just put it at a different AFR with the choke, and then let's see if she'll drive. Seems to drive pretty good, actually. Hopefully I don't crash and die. That'd be a bad way to end this. Looks like I'm gonna crash and die.
Vuotta täytin.